Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Catherine, if you didn't already know. As you'll see by the title, today I'm going to be sharing with you all my contour and highlight secrets, how I achieve this sort of look, super glowy, snatched, you know. So yeah, if you want to see kind of my tips and tricks, favourite products that I love to use, then do keep on watching, and don't forget to subscribe down below, give it a thumbs up, and other than that, let's get into it. Okay, so this is literally no makeup. I haven't prepped my skin yet, so I'm just going to run through really quickly what I like to do to prep my skin. And recently I've been using the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Serum Crystal Elixir, and I just like to put a couple of drops of this all over my face. I sometimes also put these on in the evening when I take my makeup off, but I'm just finding it's making my skin super soft and just a lot more dewy, and I'm not getting any like dry patches or anything. Like, it's just really like helped my skin a lot. And I know it's a bit more pricey, but I'd definitely say from using it for a good few weeks now, like, it's really worth the investment. So I popped some of that on, and then as a primer I also like to use the Charlotte Tilbury Wonder Glow. It's like has like a soft like glow to it, so again it just makes your makeup like super glowy. I know this is primarily focusing on how I contour and highlight, but just having glowy skin can really help with the highlighting side of things. So this is what I use to prep my skin. And then I like to do my foundation and eye makeup before I start with any contouring and highlighting. So that's what I'm going to do first. I usually do my eyeshadow, lashes, and then foundation, so I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'll come and talk through my contour and highlight routine. Okay, so now I have applied my foundation and my eye makeup, I then like to go in with my concealer. Now I think it's important to conceal, set, and then bronze, rather than some people bronze and conceal at the same time. But I just think, especially with like cream contour, that's just going to create like a new foundation shade. It's not actually going to help you contour and highlight. So I'd recommend concealing first, blending that in, and then doing your next step. That's personally what I do. So for concealer, I like to take a mix of concealers. So for today's concealer, I have so many concealers I really like, but I'm going to use the Chanel concealer, and this is in the shade 30, I think. Yeah, 30 Spade. Pop this on all the higher points of my face. I like to run it all the way up to the sides of my nose, because I have quite a, like, I don't know, I don't have the easiest nose shape to contour. So I actually just use my concealer and highlight as the way I contour my nose. I don't put any product down the sides of my nose like some people do. I did used to try to do that, but to be honest, it just made it worse, because it just kind of looked really blotchy. And yeah, my nose isn't, I really don't like my nose. Like, my nose is one of my insecurities, but it's just really not the easiest nose to contour. So I don't put any bronzer on there, but I do conceal quite. That's how I contour my nose, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm just putting this all over. A key place is this part here, which will help create depth and shadow. Acts as a really nice guide for when you put your bronzer on. So that's why I like to also conceal first, because then it guides where I'm going to put my bronzer. And then I like to take a more brightening concealer over the top. So today I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty Concealer, the Pro Filter one in the shade 140. And I just put this like under my eyes, just in the inner corner. And then I put this on my forehead and my chin, my Cupid's bow. And that is where I put my concealer, and then I just take my damp beauty blender and I blend it all in. Okay, so now I've blended in my concealer, you can see that's totally like brightens up my face. I'm starting to create like shadows down beneath my cheekbones, and also just brighten up all those high points of my face. If I were to cream contour, this is where I do it before I go ahead with any powders, but I actually don't tend to cream contour anymore. Like, I found I would use cream contour sticks, and sometimes it can be good, especially for like the jawline and like this part of my nose and forehead. But with your cheekbones, sometimes it can just look a bit dirty, or it doesn't quite blend properly where it's like a thicker consistency. So I would actually recommend just using powders to contour. Like, I've tried and tested both techniques and use a combination of both from time to time, but I actually do prefer just using powder products nowadays. So what I do next is actually set my concealer into place, and then once I've got all my powder on, I then use that as a guide for my bronzer. So yeah, I'm not going to cream contour because I just don't like doing that, and sometimes yeah, it can just look a bit cakey, a bit like almost like muddy if it doesn't blend properly. So I would just recommend avoiding that, to be honest. I think there's so much you can do with powder bronzer that you don't necessarily need to cream contour. Like, I don't know, I just think it's a bit unnecessary, so I'm not going to do that. I'm instead going to take my Huda Beauty baking powder in the shade Banana Bread, and then I like to take a separate beauty blender, and basically anywhere you put concealer, put powder over it and set it into place. Really want to set your makeup, and obviously you don't want it sliding anywhere, you want it to last all day. I'd take a nice, like, a good layer of this and just like kind of press it into the skin where you've put your concealer. So the main places to focus on, obviously, like under the eyes, because you don't want that to crease throughout the day, and also the forehead as well, especially if you're a little bit more oily. You don't want your concealer to be sliding around your face, so it's really important to use a setting powder to set it into place. Like, this one is really nice, and obviously the Laura Mercier translucent setting powder is another really nice one. I think they're my two favourites for setting your concealer. It's also important to kind of place the powder in the correct angle, especially with under your cheekbones. Like, if you want a sharp kind of more snatched, like that sort of thing, literally suck in your cheeks and follow that line. And then that's a really nice guide for when you pop on your bronzer. Now you've got your kind of baking powder on, I'd seriously let it set for like 10 to 15 minutes just so it really starts to sink into the skin, lock everything in and properly bake. So if you've got the time, obviously day to day you might not have 10-15 minutes to spare, but if you're going for like to an event, or you're really wanting to do your makeup like full glam, then I'll definitely say let this set for a good 10-15 minutes, and then while that's setting you can start to bronze up your face, and it really does act as a guide as to where to pop the bronzer. I have a few bronzers I like to use, so what I would say is, especially if you're new to contouring, I'd say don't go too ham with the bronzer, don't go too dark either, because you will just start to look quite cakey and a bit patchy and it won't look natural. So my go-to bronzers, I love the Chanel Le Beige's bronzer, this is in shade number 40, and this is a really nice like natural bronzer. The Milani Cosmetic baked bronzer in Dulce, it's a really nice natural bronzer. And then when I'm going a bit more like heavy contouring, I love to use the Fenty Beauty bronzer, and this is in the shade Island Ting. So I'm going to start by warming up my face with a slightly lighter bronzer. So what I'll do is I'll take the Chanel bronzer and I'll start to warm up my face. So this one comes with like quite like a nice neat brush, and this is really good especially if you are new to like contouring, bronzing, like because it's quite a small brush. You can literally take a bit of the bronzer, tap it off slightly, and then what I like to do is kind of lift my face. You see this line, that's what you're going to start to work upwards. So I just pack it on, and it's important to be putting the product upwards because you want to create a line here. You wouldn't want to go down because that's just going to make it look weird. So very lightly start to bush the product up in kind of this C shape. So I do that very lightly just to start with, and this is just to start to build the contour. And depending on what your face shape is like and what you're trying to achieve, the more bronzer you put on your forehead, the smaller it's going to look, and the more concealer you put, the larger it's going to look. So it depends if you're trying to elongate or shorten your forehead as to how much concealer and bronzer you should be putting on it. So I like to put my concealer up to about here, and then I have about another inch where I bronze, and then I do sweep it very lightly under the jawline, and it's important to always blend it down your neck. So I'd say this little compact is really good if you are a beginner, because you get a really nice brush with it, and this shade is just perfect because it's like, it's not too dark, but it just starts to carve out and bronze up your face. So you can see already, like, you're getting a bit of depth and warmth, but it's nothing too heavy just yet. I do take a little bit on the tip of my nose just to help shorten it a bit. And then it's really important to always blend it in. So it's all well and good obviously bronzing up your face, but I think the key thing is to blend and spend time blending it in, because that way it will be like less patchy and more seamless. I'm going to take that Fenty beauty bronzer, and I'm going to take like a fluffy, it's probably like a medium sized brush, and I just swirl that into the compact, tap it off, and then I start to just buff in where that other bronzer is. So I kind of just pack it into the skin, and it starts to create more of a shadow. You see? But it's important to build it up slowly, like don't go ham with it, because that's where it starts to look a bit cakey, a bit clunky. It's not nice. So just start to pack it in, and if for example you think, oh, I've gone a bit like heavy handed there, what you can do is take that beauty blender and just kind of blend it out. And it's good that you're still baking, because you're still, once you wipe this off, you're not going to have like bronzer kind of start to fall down. Like, I just think doing it this way round just helps it be a bit more neat and snatched. And again, it's important to be doing it at an angle if you want that proper like snatched look. Like you can see, I'm doing it at an angle. I'm following my natural contour, but I'm making sure it's not falling, or it's not just like a big blob. You can see I'm really starting to create a nice shadow on my cheekbones and just help contour. So yeah, it's really not, it's nothing like revolutionary, that's just how I do it. But I'd say don't do what I used to do, like just pack on the bronzer and kind of hope for the best. But it's really important to place it in that really key area, and also take it slowly, build the product up and blend, make sure you are blending it out so that it's just a bit more seamless and natural. And do keep, like, remember to blend it all the way down your neck as well. So the powder has been setting for about 10 minutes now, and I'm going to start to dust it off. But be careful not to just like, if you just dust it off and then you're going to get product where your bronzer is. So just pack it in and make sure you're following the line. And if it does look a bit harsh, like the contrast, then just take your beauty blender and blend it out. But remember to swipe downwards for this part, and then obviously your bronzer is upwards, because you do want there to be a difference to create that contour. And when I start to dust off my under eyes, I also ensure this is like really neat and I don't let it like mix too much with the bronzer. So here I like to take it again at like a slight angle, because it does just help lift your face. So I'm more like buffing it in rather than like just sweeping it off. Like I'm doing it really, really carefully. And the same with the nose. I just pack it in, and then you've got like a guide to follow when you're highlighting. So make sure you do kind of dust it off neatly. Now, one little tip I would recommend is if you feel like you've gone a bit ham on the baking powder, or you feel like it's a bit too light in contrast, then just take a more like skin colour kind of powder and just lightly dust over it before you then start to bronze up again. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury powder airbrush flawless finish in the shade 1. So what you can do is just go over that setting powder and just blend it in a bit more to make it a bit more natural and seamless. So it's like an additional layer of powder, but sometimes that can just help kind of get rid of those. If you feel like it's a bit too light or it's a bit too harsh, then just go over it with a slightly more natural powder, and that will just help kind of make it a bit more nice and blended like so. So now I've really got my guide of where I need to warm up and highlight. So I will tend to take a tiny bit more of my Fenty Beauty bronzer just to kind of warm it up right on the high points before I then go in with my highlight. So I just go over what I've already done and mainly concentrate on this highest point just to kind of help it pop even more. Sure, everything is nice and seamless and connected. So that three that people go on about, that is key to kind of make it nice and neat and all blended. And then just always buff it out. I think that's the way to get it to be as seamless and flawless as possible, is just keep blending. Like, you have to spend the time blending. Now it's time to highlight and brighten up the face even more. So I used to highlight definitely wrong in the past, but I've kind of got used to it now and know exactly where I need to put my highlight. And I think the key is to put it in really prominent places and not too much of it. I know, never thought I'd say that, but so my favorite liquid illuminator is the Iconic London liquid illuminating drops, and these are ones in the shade Original. So where I like to put my highlighter and where I've gone wrong in the past is actually putting it high enough. So you don't want it obviously like ridiculously high, but you probably just want it at the top of where that bronzer sits. So that's where I like to put it, and I just literally put a drop here, the tip of my nose and my chin. And it's just really key to put it right at the top of your cheekbones, but not ridiculously high or not ridiculously low. It's just right at the top. And then I just blend that in with my finger, and I kind of blend it down into the bronzer, because I used to do it, I think, way too high and also too much. But I just buff it into this part. To again follow that natural C shape, blend it in. With my nose, I just do the tip of my nose and take it slightly up the bridge, but I've said this before, I like to put it on the tip of my nose to almost take the focus away from my whole nose and just focus on the tip. It's optional. Some people hate it, but I like chin highlight for some reason. I just think it adds another dimension and it pulls everything into that center point. See? So it's not too high up. It just sits on the top of that bronzer and has a beautiful glow. My highlighting powder, so you already know what I'm going to say. This is the Dose of Colours X Iluvsarahii in the shade Soulmate, and this is honestly my favourite highlighter ever. So I take a really small detail brush and I take some of the highlight and I start to kind of work this onto the tip of my nose. And the bridge of my nose. A super intense highlight, and a lot goes a long way, but it's just a gorgeous colour, and it does give you that intensity. If that's what you like in a highlight, then I couldn't recommend this enough. And then for where I've put the liquid illuminator, I take a little bit on my finger instead of using a fan brush, because sometimes a fan brush can result in it like going way like in the wrong places. So I just pack it using my fingertip onto where the drops went. You see? And that is a glow. And you've also noticed it's really concentrated. Like I haven't brought it too far down, I haven't brought it too far up. I really do just concentrate it on the actual cheekbone itself. And then last thing to do is just set that all into place, lock it all in. So I'm just going to use the Smashbox Photo Finish Setting Spray, and I'm just going to like spritz this all over my face and lock it all in. Okay, so this is the final look. Yeah, that's kind of how I contour and highlight. I mean, I hope you found it useful. Obviously, it's not to say like this is exactly what you should be doing. That's just personally how I do it. My little tips and tricks, kind of what I've learned over the years once I've played around with contour and highlighting. But yeah, that's how I contour and highlight at the moment. They're kind of my favourite products to use. So yeah, I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, give the video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe down below. Also follow me on Instagram if you're not already, and I'm sure I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye.